Good morning. It's Judge's Jules. And I've got Simon here with me. It's been a few weeks, Si. How are you doing, mate? How was Derby Day?
Not too bad. A bit of an old dodgy Hobson's choice, as they say. But
yeah,
I'm back. Yeah.
I forgot to say to you, we was going to say you've had more breaks than Jimmy White, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Good
more, all the paint, all the orange paint to protest us through. I think some of it's got down the old throat.
Good man. I thought I saw you doing the rugby tackle.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it? I actually think, just quickly on that now I watched at the rugby where these cretins got on the pitch, and as they were led away, I'm not encouraging violence, of course, but people were throwing like beer and whatnot and jeering them, which is what they deserve. The same thing happened on Saturday. It's only when the crowds at these places now sort of take control of the situation, I think this is going to stop. Otherwise, we're going to have every major race meeting with a ring of steel around it. And
and the thing is, they promised they wasn't going to do it, and you knew they were. And the other thing,
the bloke who said you shouldn't have run the race. We were on the track. Don't go on the track then.
Yeah, and 15 seconds after the race had started.
I mean, he wanted to be closer to horses. He nearly was, wasn't he, the bloke? But we don't need to give him the time of day. But yeah, it was good to see that everything went off to plan. Decent derby as well, I think, Judge. There was some thoughts that it wasn't. I think it turned out to be a decent one.
I do think the win was very good. Bearing in mind what happened in the Guineas, and for him to come from that. He's very well bred as well, isn't he? So anyway, let's move on. Shall we do the derby then, mate? So I think we both had a duel. I think I'm just going to let you take the duel from it, but let's crack on with the derby.
Yeah, like I say, there was some concern as to whether this was going to be a great year, and I think that often is when you get it kind of 9-2 the field and 3 horses at that, and no real mover overnight. August Rodin obviously had it to prove, and he has proved it in exceptional horse. Fair play. I just felt that you had no evidence to do it apart from confidence from the yard. But it's all right after the event. Aidan O'Brien and Coolmore are confident about everything. They're breathing operations. So when people go, he said it had run well, he says that all the time. He has to do. So I prefer evidence on the track. King of Steel's run an incredible race, absolutely incredible. David Loughnane must have watched that when his head in his hands, who got that horse removed. Great big thing. I mean, that's got a future on. You think of Ascot and a King George, that thing getting into that gallop. I thought Kevin Stott gave a great interview after. I mean, the man was clearly distressed. They were trying to sort of say, "Isn't it fantastic you finished second?" And he was trying to get across, "No, it isn't. It's absolutely dreadful." I thought it was a brilliant interview.
Very honest, wasn't it? You could see how much it hurt, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, and Varian himself came on with Lydia after and was just sick, absolutely sick. And I thought he came over very, very well.
It's okay to be disappointed, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's okay. It's normal.
They might never get so near to winning a derby again. I mean, O'Brien will have 25 entered next year. They won't. The first duel, and I think it's a sort of joint duel, as we say, is White Birch. Now, I got told about this horse from a very dear friend of mine before York about just how highly this was rated. And I took it with a certain pinch of salt. Sorry, he won't be watching. And now, the ground, came up fast at York. I don't know. I suppose the form has proved that he probably was not an unlucky loser. The race didn't pan out for him in the Dante. He's come here, of course, fast ground. The trainer has said, we wanted it to be soft, but it isn't. We still fancy him. He wasn't particularly strong in the betting. I think he's run a great race. I mean, I don't think he was intentionally held up like people think by Colin Keane. I actually think he completely blew the start. If you watch the replay, it wasn't a case of Colin Keane thinking, right, I'm going to tuck in at the back. The horse basically didn't start the race, and it was on quick ground. He had it to do from there. If you look round the bend, I mean, he's so far back. I think he's run some fantastic fractions in the last couple of furlongs to end up being third. He's passed some good horses. Now, the obvious thing is, and I know you think this about the Ledger, but I actually think there's a big Group 1 over 1.5 miles in this. I think, we're not always going to have fast ground on these big days. the Irish Derby is often run on soft. If it were, you know, he with the blowing the start, let's give him a length and a half for that. You know, then you're looking at he's maybe only got two and a half lengths to pick up on the front two. Now, August Rodin will be suited by soft. I'm not so sure about King of Steel, but I think White Birch on soft, or you know, the heavier the better, would give anything a race in the Irish Derby. That's the obvious way they go. I know he was talking about the Ledger and the Ledger Trial. If he runs in the Ledger Trial, I think they'll take him back to York at the Ebor meeting, which again is often run on quick, but not always. So maybe we think this horse is ground dependent a little bit too much. I just think he's a horse that has got a bit of a quirk in him, and they need to really work on this starting, because he blew the start at York, he blew the start on Saturday, and they just need to get him in them stalls and get him firing out. If he ever starts a race on terms, Judge, he's going to be very, very dangerous to anything. Now, the other one I want to just quickly mention, and we'll throw it over to you, is my selection, which was Artistic Star, who finished 7th. Now, he was the most inexperienced coming into this. I did say on Saturday morning that, you know, I wish he did have another run at least, but we didn't, and it was a big price. I thought they'd back in. They did. Then he kind of was sweating up a bit before, and he drifted late on the exchanges. I think he's run all right. I think he hated Epsom. It all happened too quick for him. He started well. Hornby got like pushed back to the rear. And at one point, I thought Rob Hornby had maybe been told by Beckett, if this horse has got no chance, go easy on him. And he dropped his hands and was just bringing him home. Then the horse has shot forward. He's moved him out. And if you watch, really, he's going as quick as White Birch in the last furlong. But he's way back. I think he passed 5 horses in the last half furlong to a furlong. I certainly think his reputation has not been ruined by this. And I think there's some serious pots with this. He's my Ledger horse out of this. I think they'll train him for that race. Yeah. I think he's got a bit more stamina than a White Birch, maybe. I don't think he's quite as classy as White Birch, but I think, you know, you'll come on to it later, but the form took a little bit of a boost from his Sandown race in later in the meeting. And I would not give up on this horse for anybody. I think he will have learned a lot about racing on Saturday, and back on a more traditional track. I think they'll train him for the Ledger. Maybe you only see him a couple of times before that. And I think he's a major player in that race. So they'd be my 2 to take out.
Yeah, it's a bit like with you with the Derby. First of all, it's good to see he was disappointed. But when you watch the race back, because it did look like King of Steel probably went too soon. But he had to go for the gap at the same time. You know, if it was there, you can't get stuck. Otherwise, could have easily happened to Westover, wasn't it, last year? He went for the gap, he went. But when you actually look it back, Ryan Moore was going just as well, and he sort of let him go, and then he picked him up. And I still think he won a shade comfortably myself. I don't think if they look back at the race, I don't think they'll be as disappointed. But don't forget, it was only the horse's 3rd run, and it was interesting because the Futurity, last year's 2-year-old race, hadn't worked out at all. Nothing had come out of the race at all and run any good.
It has now.
As now the first 2 in the Derby ended up coming out of that race, and you might have said that at the start, you know, at the end of that race last year, but you wouldn't have thought so leading up to the race on Saturday, would you? I sort of agree and disagree with you on both your things. I definitely agree with you, White Birch. I do think I think it's reverse. I do think perhaps he hasn't got the class and has the more stamina out of the 2, and I do think your other selection has perhaps a little bit more class. What I would like to see, sometimes the Derby can blow some horses, can't it? If you consider Makalala last year come 4th in the Derby, that's completely lost the plot since, isn't it? I mean, it's not run any sense for quite a while. So
it's a brutal race, isn't it? It can be.
It can be. So it's just one of them difficult ones where I kind of think like White Birch is a bit more grizzled. You know, it's sort of, you can see it's definitely going to be going forwards, whereas your horse is sort of progressive and then run well, but did the race? Was it too much for it too early in its career? I hope it's not, because I think the horse has got a lot of potential. Because, like I say, we're going to come to the other race later on, but I think it was a better Derby than people think credit for. I didn't really like Arrest. I couldn't understand how that went on favourite. That was bookies' money. It's sweating and messing about going to the start. I mean, it was one of them ones you think, cool, scratching your head how that can be around that sort of price. But And the Charlie Appleby horses just still not running, are they? Because
I did say on Saturday I was
yeah,
terrified about the Godolphin form. Terrified for people.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the one ran all right in the first. To be fair, it came second, run a race, but Military Order was very disappointing. You know, and I do think that's a knockout run. When you start seeing the Appleby horses praise, you know, back in form, I think that will sort of step forward, if you like, again, because that's definitely wasn't its running, was it? Really? No. No. So yep. So we've done the Derby. So shall we? We might as well, as we got the link on, we move on to a later race there, the 355. Yeah. And Torito absolutely bolted up in this. Could be called the winner a long way from home. And this horse chased home your last duel last time out. And before that Sandown race, there's a horse that come third in that race running today. Funny enough, but it's wearing a hood first time. I thought pretty short considering. But it did look a good race. But the one I've got from Saturday, we're doing the 355 from Saturday. I like the run of a horse called Promoter, a Rafe Beckett horse. This was his second time in a handicap. He's ran in novice stakes last year and he came fifth in a Group 3 at Newbury on his second. I think it was his third start last season. Ran okay at Chester. Yeah, it's a tricky track sometimes, Chester, isn't it? But over 7.5 furlongs on soft ground, and this horse is bred and absolutely bred to want middle distances. So the step up to 1.25 miles was always going to suit. So it's 1 mile, 2.5 furlongs, and it was going nowhere turning in. Hated the track, hanging down the camber, didn't want any of it. And you watch it finishing inside the last furlong. It was under hand ride. It stayed on strongly into fifth. I can see with a slightly softer surface and a more conventional track, and even stepping up in trip. Because when you look in his family, he's got where are we? Look. So the Dam of French Ledger winner Scope. So it's got mile 6 form in the pedigree. I think this horse is definitely going to want to step up in trip. I can see this run well at Royal Ascot in one of the decent handicaps if it gets in. For me, I think it's got quite a lot of movement from the markets currently running off. And I'll be surprised there's not a big handicap in this horse later in the season.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree with you more. I clearly loathed Epsom. You'll never see it back there. Yeah. I just wonder one thing from that race, Judge. Is that the last time we'll see Torito in a handicap? Yeah,
because you think he's got to be running in listed races at least, haven't you? Yeah. It was definitely
any Silver Swords run his race.
Yes.
Masai Mara, the other Gosden horse, I thought ran a nice race. Promoter is the one to take out. But I mean, they're very unlucky turning up at a Class 2 handicap. I think they've run into a.
Yeah, they've run into a group horse in a handicap, the old Chestnut.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the Haydock, the big race, the one that Frankie ran the previous Saturday. You know, everything else ran its race. Yes. That thing was in a different parish, wasn't it? I mean, that can just happen with these big yards when they have one. You know, just to put it into context, Silver Sword is a very solid performer at Class 2, Class 3 level. Very solid.
Yeah.
Torito had 9.7, Silver Sword had 8.8, and he's laughed at him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're talking, aren't we, upper echelons of, I don't know, Gosden often targets like Cambridgeshire with these sort of horses, doesn't he? He does like to win the big handicaps.
Yeah. It depends what the handicapper does with him. He's got to go up 10, hasn't he, for that? You know, you'd be surprised.
And then, but would he have won with another 10 on Saturday? I suspect he would.
I think he probably would. But and that handicap often throws up some decent horses, doesn't it? The 3-year-old.
No, interesting race, that.
Yeah.
Interesting race, and I certainly think yours, loathed it and ran well despite Epsom, really, didn't it?
It did, yeah, that's right. Have you got another one for us? I can't remember now.
I certainly have, yeah. We got the 505. The final
that's right, because we've got to talk about it again. Perfect.
The Class 2, yeah. Now, Mr. Wagyu is all the rage. I said on Saturday to somebody, if you're a pub owner in Malton, York, Scarborough, whatever, you're going to have a very busy Saturday night if Mr. Wagyu wins. Such was the level of the punt. I think I told you that I suspect Connections of Badry, the winner, thought that maybe they'd do well to beat it. It was just one of those things. They've gone very, very quick. It's one of the things we've raised on this program time after time after time. 6 furlongs, even on a quick track, you cannot sprint the whole way. How Mr. Wagyu has stayed in touch with the front 2. Watch the replay. Watch the horses who are around it, the front 3 or 4.
Yeah.
and watch where the other three finish at the end. I won't spoil the ending for you, but they finish slap, second last, third last. Somehow, Mr. Wagyu, I mean, Jason Hart's got caught up in the moment. He's gone far too fast, stayed on well. So he's an obvious one. But you know, we're trying to find the sort of sneaky angle. Now, the horse in fourth, Haymaker, was the subject of a massive gamble, trained by Hughie Morrison. I think this is a really exciting young sprinter. Now, Hughie Morrison would be in my top 5 of trainers to watch when the money comes down. This guy is seriously shrewd. He knows exactly what he's got. Very studious guy. He will have thought Haymaker off that rating was ready to win one of these good handicaps. Now, the jockey said after not inquiry, but just comments that he suffered interference shortly after leaving the stalls, which bothered him the whole way around. Don't know if he knows how it bothered the horse, but I think not as blatant as the one you've just given, but I think this horse didn't let himself down at all. I think it really, really did not like this track. Now, I still think if Morrison thinks this is ready to do the business in a big handicap off this mark, he's not going to get put up for that. He might get put up £1 at most. I think next time out, you'll see this on a flat track, maybe a Haydock or something like that, Sandown maybe. I think he's a bet because this was strong form anyway, but you know, you can give him a couple of lengths at least from the bump in to the not acting at the track. Like I say, if they went in heavy, they're going to go in heavy again next time, and it might be one of those where look where he's entered and get on as quick as you can, because they will have a go on this next time. They obviously think it's a highly progressive sprinter. You look at the race before that, it looked really impressive. You've got to forgive any horse a bad run at Epsom, Judge, is my view on this one. So Haymaker in capital letters for the tracker.
For the knockout blow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A left hook.
Yeah, seriously, old Haymaker. Well, if you consider its previous form, it beat Spanish Star, who came out and unfortunately chinned darkness on Friday. The form of its previous run was franked. This horse is a front runner as well, Si, and it didn't get to the lead. So I do think there's, like you say, the little bump at the start. The start is important, which we'll come on to later on for another race. It is important for some horses. If you don't lead, it's your race finished with. It's like some greyhounds, they can't lead. They're finished, aren't they? And you know, this not saying this horse, this actually run a cracker's come fourth. But I am actually putting up the obvious one here. I thought Mr. Wagyu ran an absolute blinder, and this is his time of year. Obviously all his wins are nearly all in June. He's naturally now down to a mark. He's below where he won off at the Curragh last year. He won that big handicap at the Curragh. He came fourth in the Wokingham last year off a £5 higher mark. He might get put up £1 for coming third here, but he might get left on 96. If he gets left on 96, he's got a fantastic chance. Whether he'll find one or two too good in the Wokingham's another thing, but I do think if he's on the right side of the track, he'll be a great place bet in the Wokingham. I think he's the one horse you know, whatever he'll be thereabouts, if you see what I mean. But good horse for your place pot in a couple of weeks' time. It'll soon be here now. So I really like the run of Mr. Wagyu, and you've got to back him in his next 2 or 3 starts. You'll get your money's worth out of him. If he doesn't win at Ascot, you've got the race at the Curragh, and he does like York as well. He has run well there. I know he just takes a little while to get going. He likes the sun on his back, and I think he'll be popping up shortly. So also from that race, I like Mr. Wagyu. Yeah,
couldn't agree more. And I think Harty has the right ride again, which he won't. He wouldn't have.
He'd be a little bit easier, wasn't he? He's drawn 11 as well, which I know the winner was drawn wide, which isn't always a bad thing. But if you're going far, you're better off taking a tug, rather than getting up to the front from an outside draw. You're better off taking your medicine, because they do go too fast. And once again, that's how he won the race last year. They went miles too fast, and he come through late and just got up near the finish, didn't he? Yeah. But no, so that's a race that will throw up winners again. So keep an eye on that 6 furlong handicap at Epsom. And have you got any more, Matt? I think you've done your lot, haven't you? I've just got one more for us. You're done. I'm just double checking. I didn't want to sort of. I'm going back to the Friday and a bizarre race, because nearly all the races at at Epsom over the weekend, barring the race. Caius Chorister got beaten on Saturday. I keep saying yesterday. That was also slowly run. That was always going to get an easy lead. I thought the race, the mile race on the Friday that Austrian Theory won, you could tell the 2:35. That's the one. I mean, after 2 furlongs, if you've got horses like Revic, who's a bang solid, loves it round there type horse, pulling really hard in behind, reefing and tugging, and so was what was the other horse that I was looking at? So was Ross Collin, who's ran an absolute stinker, unfortunately. But the only O'Mara horse to run a stinker at the meeting. I thought you wanted to be at the front end. There it was, Mark Johnston, Charlie Johnston with the front two, getting an easy lead, and they led the field home first and second. But please watch the run back of Repertoire, the Simcock horse with Holly Doyle on. She had a bit of a shocker. I know she had the last race winner, which we've just spoken. She had a couple of shockers. She should have won on Darkness, in my opinion, if she gets across to the rail. And what she was doing on this horse, I don't know. She had a gap to come down the outside, and she tucked in. And this horse never got a clear run of it until the furlong pole. I think it was nearly last at the furlong pole. Went past nearly the whole field, barring came 5th or 6th in the end. It's got beaten 2.5 lengths. Please watch the race back. This for me definitely can win off its mark. It won its previous race under Jamie Spencer. As off a mark now, it can definitely do serious damage off. And I think he's another one. If he can get in, probably might not with his handicap mark, get in at Royal Ascot, because it has got Ascot form. There's a big, decent handicap in this, over 7 furlongs or a mile. But the way it finished here, I think a mile would really suit it. Repertoire is my final one.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I don't think Holly Doyle and Epsom go together like strawberries and cream, do they? She seems to get in some problems there. Not the only jockey that doesn't like the place.
No, it's right. It's a tough track to drive. Even.
Yeah. But it was like, and after you, Claude, they basically gave it to Austrian Theory this race. Yeah, bizarre. We've been talking about going too fast for 2 days.
Yes, pretty much the only race they went slow.
Pedestrian, wasn't it? And Fanning, for all his kind of critics, he is very, very clever at stacking horses up, and he did it again. He did it at Ripon the other night in a couple of races, got to the lead, slowed it right down, got them all off the bridle, then kicked. And he did the same thing here, and he wasn't stopping. But just quickly, Austrian Theory, if you've watched that and thought, right, I'll back him next time, just to go back in his form and look at his performance after he wins.
He's not the most consistent animal, is he? But he won't go up much for winning. I will say that. So if he gets his way again, he could easily pop up again. But he's not going to be handicapped out of things. But he's not the sort of horse you'd want to be backing short price anyway.
Be careful is my well for him with that. Now, I agree with your Repertoire. And I think Simcock, after a slow start, this is going to be like his time of year now. He'll get
you can just see them just sort of coming through. And I do. If you actually look at the race times that day, that was the only one that was running in a slow time, which tells its story as well. So
And the obvious thing, Judge, would be for connections to sort of the other horses. Say, what did you think the Johnson horse was going to do when you give it an easy lead? Did you think it was going to stop?
It's all right.
It wasn't off a slow pace, was it?
Yeah. I mean, it's also being held up as well. But there's some rides, where you think some horses have got to be held up. But there's also being held up and giving far too much to do, isn't there? You can still be held up and be sort of 5th or 6th, can't you, rather than last?
Yeah, exactly. And Epsom on ground like that, they ain't stopping.
They weren't going to come back in that race, and they didn't.
Not off slow fractions. They obviously, if you go crazily on any ground, you'll stop. Yeah.
Well, you looked at the race before, the 6 furlong race. Yeah, the kids' race. I think that might have made a bit of a bearing. The woodcut. I mean, they went absolutely bananas in that, and so the one that come third in that, run an absolute cracker. Can't remember that, but I think anyone could have spotted that one. But that was a good run. Yeah.
But it has its quirks. I think it provided.
I love the track. To be fair, I think it. A lot of people say it's not for. I think it just. There's not many bad Derby winners, is there? Really? I mean, it's not perhaps the race it was, but. I don't know. I still a bit of a traditionalist myself. I do like Epsom. It is, and actually is a good track. This time of year, you have a look at all the horses that run there. There'd be lots of good horses that come the end of the year. Go call that run at Epsom. In the handicaps, and they're good handicaps to win. And I often see next time out winners coming from it.
Yeah, all agreed. And we'll do it all again next year, Judge.
Yes, I do hope so, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so, yeah. But yeah, big week planned. Lots of racing today, actually. I just covered quickly something in my column that you have air racing today and Thirsk. All same trainers, blah, blah, blah. Very much the sort of Northern Scotland circuit. And yet yesterday we had the usual low fare jumps action. Couldn't Air or Thirsk have one of them run yesterday and put on a decent flat card? So anybody who likes flat racing and only has 2 days a week off could maybe have had bets in flat handicaps and, with it being June. But no, they're racing today.
I mean, this premierisation of things, it's some things that just look, it's some things that are so bloody obvious, which is so frustrating, isn't it? There's no common sense. It's like last week, I think there's 3 jumps races on Sunday. And guess what? There were 2 runner races, 3 runner. I mean, it's madness,
And
if
just
they have
quickly,
one,
the jocks are allowed to ride at one meeting now.
yeah.
So if you're forget all the sort of your Frankies and all that. Forget that. The vast majority of jockeys are trying to eke out a living.
Yeah.
Right. They have maybe 1 or 2 rides today at Ayr, 1 or 2 rides at Thirsk. They can't move between the two. Yesterday they could have had maybe 2 or 3 rides at each.
And you do want the best jockeys, and I mean, what is mad about that rule? I do actually kind of agree with it to a point, but they can then fly off to the Curragh or whatever, can't they? And then so you or get a helicopter for the one for the evening at a different jurisdiction.
Well, I've always said that they should have a maximum number of rides a day, maybe like 6, 7, and that could be between different meetings. But I don't think you should be having the order. We could have 7 on an afternoon whiz and then another 7. I think that's so much.
Yeah.
But there you go. Nobody asked us, Judge. That's the problem.
No. But I do think your point about it's like there's 3. If they'd had 1 jump meeting last Sunday, for example, because you could cull the fixtures without having too many, couldn't you? It's they're on about.
Just an obvious example. Why the hell didn't somebody, when they were putting the fixture list together, say, look at this Sunday, it's very, very weak, yet we've got 2 decent Monday northern flat meetings.
Yeah.
Let's just.
It's logical, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is logical.
There you go. There you go.
Well, it's lovely to see you, mate. It's lovely to be back having a good moan and going through the racing.
27 minutes of talking. That's about a record of late.
Yeah. It's been a while, mate. Been a while.
Right. I shall see you on Friday. Everybody have a good week.
Look forward to it, mate. You be lucky.
Always. Cheers, everybody.